Hey guys, welcome back to Silver Soul Gaming, and it's Seth here, back again with another video. This week, I thought I might do something similar to what I did last week, and actually go into the Batman Arkham series. Now last week I obviously talked about Batman Arkham 2019 and how it might not be happening, it was complete speculation. But I've recently been replaying and have just finished one of my favourite games of all time, Batman Arkham Knight. And I thought, hey, let's do a retrospective on Batman Arkham Knight. Look at the pros, the cons, all that good stuff. Just what makes it good, what makes it not as good as it should have been, and why was it a little bit of a disappointment in some ways. Alright, so obviously the biggest con that came with Batman Arkham Knight is the fact that the Arkham Knight himself was Jason Todd, and we all saw it coming. And I remember in the marketing stages of Batman Arkham Knight, they threw out the Red Hood trailer, and it was about a 30-second long trailer, because that's all they could really show, just to throw people off the scent of, hey, Jason Todd's the Arkham Knight, because it worked for me, and I was dead set on the fact that he was, and I was correct. But they tried so hard to divert people's attention from guessing that it was, but it was Jason Todd, unfortunately. Personally, I don't have too much of an issue with it. I think the way his character is written, it works extremely well with his backstory in the Arkhamverse, especially if you read the Arkham Knight prequel comic. It works really well. I think his character is actually written really well. I think it was just the fact that it was marketed to us as a completely new original character just for this game, even though it technically kind of wasn't. He was just Beta Red Hood, or, you know, he was pretty much just Red Hood, really. Yeah, that was a bit disappointing, and he was kind of marketed as the main thing of the game, that and the Batmobile, which I'll get into later. But the Arkham Knight himself obviously was a big disappointment to a lot of people. I don't mind it. I think it works very well with the way Jason Todd's written, with the fact that, you know, Joker kind of brainwashed him and he became the Arkham Knight through that. And then he spends all these years just watching Batman ready for attack. And then, you know, there's this whole thing that happens throughout the game, and then Jason finally realizes, oh fuck, like, Bruce actually thought I was dead and I'm just a douchebag. And, you know, he went on to be the Red Hood. That transition from the Arkham Knight to the Red Hood happens extremely quickly in the game, which I don't think's great. I would have preferred it to have been a longer thing that happens instead of happening pretty much essentially in the last quarter of the game. I don't even think it's less than a quarter of the game that it happens in, because you find out who the Arkham Knight is, and then you rescue Oracle, GCPD, that whole scene, and then as soon as you pretty much finish the attack on GCPD, you're in the end game. And yeah, that was a bit disappointing that we didn't get to see his transition from the Arkham Knight to the Red Hood through Batman. That was a little annoying, and he kind of just turns up when the story needs him to turn up, which is a little frustrating. But that overall was probably the biggest con in the game, and it still is a little frustrating to even replay it and have him be like, oh, it's Jason Todd, and nobody cares. Obviously, the second biggest one was the fact that the Batmobile, nobody asked for the battle mode. I don't know why we got it. We didn't need it. It was pointless. I get that it was in there to be like, hey, this is why Batman has a massive tank, and they also wanted to show off their creative design and, you know, be like, hey, it's a like race car that can turn into a tank. That was kind of cool, I guess, but I didn't want the drone battles in the game. I really did not like the drone battles. I think they're frustrating, annoying, and they get in the way, and they're extremely repetitive, and they only require you to press one button. Realistically, all you have to do is press R2 or right bumper or whatever the fuck it is on Xbox, and you can just win a whole battle. It's very repetitive, it's very tedious, they're just annoying. And when you've got to take on 60 of them at the end of the game, it's extremely annoying because it's really easy, but it's just takes forever. Yeah. But other than that, having a drivable Batmobile was great. That was awesome. Fucking who did not like that? Having a drivable Batmobile is, you know, it's something everybody wanted since Arkham Asylum, and we didn't get it for a long, long time. And the closest we got before this was a fast travel system with the Batwing in Origins, which isn't a great game anyway. So yeah, but other than that, I think the Batmobile was still fun. It's very overused, and they kind of overdo it. Obviously, at the very end, like I said, you've got to take on 60 of them. When the cloud burst blows off, you know, you're kind of stuck in the Batmobile for a lot of that, and it gets very frustrating and annoying. And I'm sick of the very slow puzzles that come with the Batmobile. They suck, because they take forever to do, because the Batmobile works so slowly. Anytime it requires you to use the winch, or you have to get out and get back in, and it's very tedious and annoying. That's another complaint that I had about the Batmobile. Those are probably the two biggest ones out of all of them. But then little minor ones, just like the fact that we technically didn't get all of Gotham. We did get Gotham, but we didn't really get Gotham. We got 3 islands instead of a mainland. And it's really just it's just 1/3 bigger than Origins. And that's it. It's not really much bigger than any of the other Arkham games. It's big. Vertically speaking, it's really big compared to the other ones. But just in general size, it's really not. And I get that we had not as good development cycles back then. The game had been in development since 2011, 2012. And, you know, obviously they kind of had to do what they had to do, and they probably didn't think that the PS4 was going to be able to handle what it does now. Because the PS4 can handle something like Red Dead 2, which is obviously a much larger game. And so is like Horizon Zero Dawn, but the technology around Horizon Zero Dawn's spectacular. But, you know, it's a bit sad, because I would have preferred seeing a much larger Gotham, especially in Arkhamverse Gotham as well, and have it include the Arkham City, the Asylum, and all of the mainland that's around it. And nowadays, they could have easily done that, especially if it was releasing today, and the technology that's around it it could work very well, which is why I'm excited for the next Batman game whenever that comes out, because we will definitely get a full playable Gotham, hopefully. But yeah, that was one of my minor complaints, was the fact that we didn't get a full playable Gotham. We just got like 3 islands. I couldn't, you know, they put it out there and said that it was Gotham, and you got to finally play in Gotham, but you didn't. That's kind of the thing that annoyed me. And I remember at the E3 trailer, in that E3 gameplay demo, Batman sits on the top of Wayne Tower, and they went, yeah, you can play in all of this. Anything you see, you can play in, which was false, because you couldn't. And I could tell when I first saw it that was not true, because you could clearly see the 3 islands that were rendered, textured, and had lighting, compared to the rest of the outside of the game that didn't have a clear rendering or texturing. And you could also see Arkham City to the side, and it didn't look very playable in. That was a bit frustrating. There was a few plot points that didn't work out too well when they decided to make Arkham Origins canon, and with the Batgirl prequel kind of DLC thing that was advertised along with the Harley Quinn. By making Tim Drake the Robin in the Batgirl DLC really affects the timeline, and then also by making Origins canon affects the timeline a lot as well, because Origins is only set around 6 years before the Arkham Asylum. Well, before Arkham Asylum, and then after Arkham Asylum, it's 2 years, and then you get Night. So, Batman only really exists for about 10 years in this universe, and then he's dead, which is a bit weird. And then you've also got the fact that he had all 3 Robins and Batgirl, and yeah, Now, this isn't obviously Rocksteady's fault. I think Origins itself could have done a better job in making, you know, characters like Barbara not be so young. And then, because she's clearly portrayed as like a 20-year-old in Arkham Asylum, and I think Bruce is meant to be in about his 40s in Asylum as well. He seems like a bit more of a early 40s man than a late 30s, or mid 30s, as well. Like, I think that it just didn't work out. So that means, like, you know, Dick would have only had to have been Robin for not very long at all. Same with Jason, and then we had Tim, who was Robin for, you know, at least 4 years. And then, you know, you've got... I just don't think it works, because they had to retcon the fact that he'd only been Robin in Arkham City for not very... I think 2 months or something like that. He had not been Robin for very long. And they had to retcon that. And then, you know, by making all of these Robins kind of have to come in together in about 10 years, when really it should be about, I'd say about 15 to 20 years. You'd have to chuck on another 5 to 10 years there. And, you know, it just doesn't quite work. That kind of frustrates me a little bit. But, you know, it is what it is. It's annoying, but yeah, I don't know. It just weirds me out a little bit. But I think overall, those were my major issues I had with the game. I mean, the combat was very solid again. The Predator was, like, the Predator just fighting system was actually done so well that it made you think a lot more. You were kind of forced to use every gadget in your arsenal rather than just like 3, which I found myself doing in Asylum and City and Origins, where you can literally do a silent takedown or a double takedown on everyone, and you can just chuck in some other stuff in there for fun if you want. And you're not really forced to think in those games. Whereas in a Night, I found that when they throw all these enemies at you, it kind of gets a bit overwhelming. I think that they thought, let's just throw all of these enemies at you, and it kind of makes it harder, but it didn't. But when they added in, like, the archetype, where the big brutes could change all their abilities and adding abilities to the brutes, that was interesting. I thought that was great. But then you've got, like, the Predator, where they added in guys you can't see through detective mode, and they've got the drones, and then you've got the mining all the time, and you've got Arkham Knight, like, talking in the ear and adapting, and that's the game's way of adapting to the way you play. That's done extremely well. The combat is obviously vamped up a little bit. It goes from about 0 to 10 after the Ace Chemicals little set piece. That was a bit annoying, and I find that if you're going to play Arkham Knight first, you've kind of got a bit of an issue. I thought the character writing in this game was done extremely well, especially with the Joker, which I didn't mind him being in the game, because I think the Joker's kind of meant to be the main villain of the Arkham games, and that's just kind of how they are, and I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I thought it was good to see him in there, and you got to see, like, Bruce's biggest fear of becoming the Joker, and then you've always got Joker on the side just chatting and just giving you the insight of what he would do, and, you know, that's interesting. And I think to finally end it the way they did was done not very well. I think they could have maybe done that a bit better, instead of just being like, yeah, he's Batman, so he won't become the Joker. Like, yeah, of course he's going to beat the Joker. And I was like, I would have preferred to have seen it done a little better, rather than have it happen again in that split second of where you get unmasked at the end of the game, and then it's like, oh, he pretty much becomes the Joker for about 10 seconds, and then in Bruce's head, he kind of locks him away in the asylum, which is interesting. But yeah, I don't know. That was done very quick. Like, I would have preferred to have seen a gradual thing where it peaks, and then, you know, you go down as most stories do, and he slowly kind of overcomes the Joker whole aspect of what's going on in that game. But again, I think that's explored very well. Like I said before, I think Jason was handled very well, even though he was the Arkham Knight. I still think his character was written extremely well. James Gordon was written well, even though he's not in the game a lot. his character was done very well, exploring what he would do just to save his daughter, and that relationship there that we don't really ever see in the Arkham games. That was done well. Although there was one thing that did annoy me, was the fact that they would have major plot points in Arkham City that they were kind of hinting at, you know, having a bigger little thing in Arkham Knight or the next Batman game that we thought. And they didn't matter. Like, Azrael became a side mission, and I remember he was a big part of Arkham City where... Well, he wasn't a big part, but that side mission left us on the kind of... Like, the Arkham games are going to end with Batman dying, and Azrael is going to become Batman. That never happened. It was done in a side mission where it took a whole nother turn, and it was like, oh no, the Order of Saint Demas is just fucking with Azrael. And, like, you know, the prophecy isn't really true, because it kind of is, but it isn't, because he's still alive. That was left up to interpretation at the end with Bruce blowing up, but I think he's alive. There's no way he'd kill Alfred and himself. Yeah. But that was annoying. Ra's al Ghul became a DLC side mission. That's just retarded. Oh, sorry, stupid. That's just really stupid, because he was a major plot point in the last game, and he was the big plot twist, and yeah, nah. Yeah, it's just stupid how they kind of send him off. But I think other than that, that's all I've really got to say in this little retrospective that I've done about Arkham Knight. I think the game's very great. It's not as good as Arkham City. Arkham City's the best game. Arkham Knight's second, and then Asylum, and then you've got Origins, which is whatever. Asylum and City, I'd say, are almost even for me. They're both great games, but I think just City having all the new features in it bumps it up. I might do retrospectives on more games, and maybe even all of the Arkham games. And yeah, I'll see how this goes. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you check in next week for another video. I don't know what it'll be, but we'll just have to wait and see what it is. And I'll see you guys next week then.